Out of the blue, the room was filled with the sound of a door swinging open, instantly capturing the attention of everyone inside. Dr. Jean and the two waiters, their eyes wide with anticipation and curiosity, turned their heads simultaneously towards the entrance. They were met with a sight that left them utterly surprised. A woman, donned in an elegant straw hat, gracefully made her entrance, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. The woman, with grace in her steps and determination in her eyes, approached Dr. Jean directly. There was a certain reverence in her voice as she spoke. "I offer my sincere gratitude to the Savior. I was told our young one would not have lived if it were not for you. I, noble Missouri, promise to repay this debt." Dr. Jean, a quick thinker, instantly pieced together who this woman must be. He believed her to be Gong Sun Hyen, coming to express her gratitude on behalf of her younger cousin, Gong Sun Yang. He replied not to worry about it, to ease her worries, to let her know that saving lives was his duty and not something that required repayment. She was determined to express just how grateful her family was for what Dr. Jean had done. Feeling slightly uncomfortable with all the praise, Dr. Jean blushed and tried to downplay his role. He swiftly shifted the focus from himself, advising her to prioritize her family over expressing gratitude to him. Hyen, taken aback by his words, was momentarily frozen in a state of surprise. Eventually, she managed to collect herself, excusing herself politely. With that, she hurriedly left the room, eager to reunite with her cousin. Left alone, Dr. Jean found himself deep in thought about Gong Sun Hyen. He knew of her background. Born into the main family, she was the only daughter they had. Yet, she was seen as a disappointment by many of the elders due to her lack of potential in swordsmanship, an heir unable to learn the secret techniques of the family. In contrast, her younger cousin, Gong Sun Yang, born into the collateral family, was already making a name for herself, showing great promise. Despite her own struggles and the disappointment from her family, Hyen's love and care for Yang was unwavering. She loved her younger cousin more than anyone else could. According to a novel he had read, Yang was supposed to die, leading Hyen on a path of vengeance and destruction. But with Yang alive, that tragic future was prevented. Dr. Jean realized the gravity of the situation, understanding that he had altered the course of their lives. His thoughts were interrupted as the Lord of the Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery spoke, noticing the change in Dr. Jin's demeanor. Yet before Dr. Jean could respond, he was overcome by a fit of coughing. Yu Hu was immediately at his side, the Lord, Wu Hyen voice laced with worry as he asked, "Are you all right? Are you perhaps not recovered yet?" Dr. Jean, through his coughs, managed to blame the tea for his sudden discomfort. The White Dragon Godly Doctor, who had been observing quietly, offered a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Dr. Jean, realizing he needed to be more careful around such a skilled martial artist, tried to play it off, repeating his earlier statement about the tea. The Godly Doctor, not fully convinced, offered to check Dr. Jin's pulse. Surprised but not wanting to refuse, Dr. Jean agreed, curious yet anxious about what the doctor might find. As the Godly Doctor's fingers rested on his wrist, Dr. Jean could feel something strange. A soft intrusion into his body that he couldn't quite understand. The Godly Doctor, after a moment of deep concentration, revealed that Dr. Jin's inner chi had been dispersed. This revelation shocked Lord Wu Hyen, who couldn't comprehend how a child, with no martial arts training, could have inner chi in the first place. Dr. Jean himself wore a worried expression, realizing the gravity of the situation. The Godly Doctor explained that during the bone restructuring procedure he had performed on Dr. Jean, he had implanted a small amount of inner chi to help stabilize him. The room was filled with amazement at the revelation of such a sophisticated medical procedure. Lord Wu Hyen, intrigued, asked if such a procedure could help with the absorption of elixirs in a child untrained in martial arts. The Godly Doctor, deep in thought, realized the potential uproar such knowledge could cause if it got out, as people would undoubtedly flock to him for help. He then expressed his gratitude to the Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery Service, mentioning the Lord's grandson who would soon be learning martial arts. The Lord, taken aback by the doctor's consideration, could only laugh in awe of his skills. However, the mood shifted as the godly doctor deduced the cause of Dr. Jin's scattered inner chi-dispersing poison. Lord Wu Nuhyan was outraged, unable to fathom who would harm their savior in such a way. The godly doctor, however, urged him to focus on the why instead of the who, suggesting that someone might be targeting their group. The godly doctor suggested to Lord for an immediate investigation and concerned about a potential invasion. He apologized to Dr. Jin and the godly doctor, regretful that they had been dragged into their affairs, before leaving to take charge of the situation. Left alone with the godly doctor, Jin was asked if he knew about the chi-dispersing poison. Pretending to be surprised, he played the part of the ignorant child, allowing the doctor to believe he had unwittingly ingested the poison. Yet, in his mind, Jin was calculating, understanding the necessity of his actions to prevent a future calamity. Jin found himself reminiscing about his past activities. Now, this guy had a bit of a history of using his colleagues as human guinea pigs, all in the name of practicing his medical skills. Progress is progress, no matter how small, he would tell himself, even considering consuming the poison just to understand it better. Quite a risky move, if you ask me. On the other side of the coin, we have the godly Dr. Bakran, who was a bit concerned about Jin's well-being. He couldn't fathom why Jin would willingly take poison, knowing the risks involved. Nevertheless, Bakran acknowledged Jin's bravery, telling him that if they managed to solve this case, it would be Jin who'd save the Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery Service, not him. Bakran, feeling a bit of pressure himself, decided to offer Jin a comforting smile and a promise to have a chat once everything was settled. But little did he know, Jin had other plans in mind. With a sly grin, Jin thought about how he could turn this situation to his advantage, thinking about all the money and benefits he could squeeze out of them. Putting on his best act, Jin played the part of the innocent, lost boy. Telling them he couldn't even remember his family or where he was from. And boy, did that work like a charm. Lord Wu Nuhyan was moved by Jin's words and assured him that as the leader, he would make sure Jin didn't leave empty-handed. He declared that Jin was their savior, and he would be treated as such and promising to make sure Jin wouldn't be disappointed with his help. But in a sudden twist, Dr. Bakran placed a hand on Lord Wu's shoulder, and simply saying, "Nope." This left everyone, including Jin and Lord Wu, with their eyes wide open, completely shocked. Lord Wu, taken aback, reminded Dr. Bakran of the extreme lengths he had gone to help Jin, including a bone restructuring procedure. Dr. Bakran, with a cunning smile, simply laughed and repeated, "Ha ha ha, nope." This left Lord Wu utterly confused, as he couldn't figure out what Dr. Bakran was denying. Night began to fall, and everything at the Cloud Dragon Delivery Service base was quiet. But the quietness was misleading, it felt like something bad was about to happen. At the edge of this quiet area, a group of assassins was moving closer to the base. They came with a bad plan to sneak in and break the quiet inside the base. They got past the base's defenses easily, like shadows in the dark. They looked around carefully, ready for any trouble. Moving quickly and without making a sound, they jumped from one rooftop to another, getting closer to where they wanted to go. As twilight melted into the deep blue of night, the leader of the assassins whispered to his cohort, sensing an unsettling calm. "It's too silent," he mused, suspecting their spy had already set the stage with sleep-inducing drugs and mystical poisons. One of his men confirmed their readiness, all agents poised for the command. Without a sound to be heard by the untrained ear, the leader sent out a special frequency, a secret signal meant only for those sensitive to the currents of inner chi. It was a silent alarm to detect any presence within the base. The assassins braced themselves, ready to strike at the heart of the Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery. But as they surged forward to commence their assault, they were met with an unexpected sight. The Lord of the Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery, Wunyu stood waiting, a command on his lips to obliterate the enemy. Shock rippled through the assassins as members of the Cloud Dragon erupted in defense, flames leaping from their hands. The battle's chaos engulfed them. The assassin leader, bewildered and caught off guard, found the cold edge of Wunyu sword at his neck. "How did you uncover our plans?" he demanded. The Lord revealed their protector, the godly doctor, and questioned who had been sent to do their bidding. The leader's response was cut short as he attempted a desperate ploy, only to be met with the Lord's formidable Yellow Emperor's sword technique, sending him reeling. The clash escalated, the two combatants locked in a fierce and relentless duel, swords clashing with the sound of thunder. The Lord's eyes narrowed, recognizing the infamous stance of the vampiric ghost swordsmanship, a technique of the demon forces. The assassin, confident, unleashed his sword flurry, a maelstrom of blades meant to overwhelm. But Lord Wunyu countered with his own majestic ability, the World Correction Yellow Emperor's sword technique, meeting his opponent head-on. As they fought, the Lord contemplated the assassin's demonic blade, thirsty for blood. Yet, his resolve was ironclad, his purpose clear, to protect. The assassin, overconfident, saw an opening. But in that moment of arrogance, he failed, only grazing Wunyu cheek. Seizing the opportunity, the Lord executed his most powerful move, the sky-rising dragon lying sleeping dragon's ascension. The assassin stood no chance, he had never encountered such mastery of the sword. Victory belonged to Wunyu. Upon defeating his foe, the Lord swore an oath to eradicate all enemies. And with that, the battle's tide had turned, its echo resonating through the night. The camera pans to Dr. Jean, our protagonist, cautiously peering from behind a door. His eyes reflect the chaos unfurling outside, it's like a war has erupted. The assassins and the Cloud Dragon Secure Service are locked in a fierce clash, the former intent on destruction, the latter desperate to defend their home and lives. Dr. Jean then quietly shuts the door, distancing himself from the tumult. He turns to find a child sleeping in the room, a child he had tended to earlier. The boy remains in a deep slumber, oblivious to the bedlam. Dr. Jean contemplates the child's future, pondering the possibility that a never-ending sleep might be a mercy, considering the dangers that await him in life. How intriguing, Dr. Jean muses, that so many have conspired to end your story before it truly begins. He acknowledges the strength of the Cloud Dragon Secure Service, knowing that they might have prevailed even without his warning, though at a great cost. Settling beside the child's bed, Dr. Jean watches over him. Suddenly, the child lets out a startling scream, a sound so primal that it seems more beast than boy. Dr. Jean startles, his mind racing. Should I wake him? He wonders. But he knows the child had been unresponsive before, and he suspects the bloodshed outside might be seeping into the child's dreams. Dr. Jean sets off in search of incense to mask the metallic scent of blood. Upon finding it, he lights candles and a fragrance he doesn't fully recognize fills the room. He hopes it's strong enough to quell the child's inner turmoil. As the scent takes hold, the child's cries begin to fade. Dr. Jean exhales in relief, quietly settling over the room once more. He looks down at the child with a smile tinged with admiration, acknowledging the boy as the story's true hero. It's wise to be on your good side, he whispers to himself. Resigned to the loss of restful sleep with the ongoing slaughter just beyond the walls, Dr. Jean braces himself for a long night. There goes my good night's sleep, he sighs, resigning himself to vigilance until dawn. In the aftermath of the fierce confrontation, the quiet that enveloped the area was filled with loss, both sides had paid dearly. Dr. Jean, sensing the stillness, wondered if the conflict had reached its end. The once pervasive smell of blood and the cacophony of battle had dissipated. Curious, he edged towards the door to glimpse the outcome. Peering outside, he caught sight of the remaining Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery Service members calling out in urgency. There were many wounded in need of aid. Opening the door slightly, Dr. Jean was hit by the reality that the battle was indeed over. The scene differed from what he had anticipated. The casualties were fewer, the base still stood resilient. Closing the door, Dr. Jean was caught in a moment of indecision. Should he remain a spectator, keeping his unique skills hidden to ensure his safety? Or should he step out and offer his aid, potentially saving lives? His abilities were extraordinary, possibly too much so, they might raise suspicion of espionage. He opted for caution, resolving to stay put and later align himself with the Cloud Dragon Service, carving out a new existence as a healer in this world. As he reflected, memories of his past life surfaced, memories of a civil war, of volunteering, and of a life lost to save a child. He questioned that sacrifice, the weight of his choice pressing upon him. Did that child survive? He pondered. Was my decision to save them the right one? Lost in thought, Dr. Jean could only concede to the uncertainty that haunted him. I don't know, either. I really don't know, he confessed to the silence around him. The silence was shattered by another scream. This time, it seemed even more urgent. Dr. Jin's heart raced as he realized something was terribly wrong. The child, Yeo Harayun, had fallen silent, too silent. In the dim light, Dr. Jean could see the boy's chest was still, he wasn't breathing. Panic surged through him as he called out, "Hey! Wake up! Yeo Harayun!" But the child lay motionless. Seconds ticked by, each one heavy with dread. Dr. Jin's voice grew frantic, "Yeo Harayun! Wake up! Yeo Ha!" In a startling moment, the boy's eyes snapped open, revealing an unnatural red hue, like embers glowing in the dark. Before Dr. Jean could react, Yeo Harayun's hands shot up, seizing him by the throat with an alarming strength. Jean gasped for air, clawing at the boy's grip. Through his fading consciousness, he noticed the intense bloodlust in Yeo Harayun's eyes, a stark contrast to the child's innocent appearance. It was a bloodlust that seemed far beyond his years, a primal rage that Jean had never seen before. As Yeo Harayun's hands tightly gripped Jin's throat, the room grew tense. Jean struggled to speak under the intense pressure. Yeo Harayun, with a mad look in his eyes, demanded to know who had sent Jean. But Jean couldn't find the words, the grip was too strong, and he was too shocked by Yeo Harayun's sudden violence. Trying to speak, all Jean could manage were some choked sounds. Yeo Harayun, growing impatient and angry, yelled out a threatening statement, saying he would just kill Jean and then find out the answers by asking his corpse. Jean, gasping for air, could hardly breathe. He made struggling noises, trying to get some air. In his mind, Jean thought it must be because Yeo Harayun had the blood of a natural killer, which made him extremely strong and scary. The concept of a natural killer is defined by an innate genius for murder. This individual is not just a mere assassin, they are a prodigy of death, born with an innate genius for ending lives. With each life they take, their power grows exponentially, making them an unstoppable force. Their ability to master martial arts is unparalleled, rendering them far superior to any other. These natural killers are, in essence, heaven-sent murderers, wielding potential as vast as it is deadly, yet, this immense power comes with a perilous drawback, the madness inherent in their abilities. It's a consuming, overwhelming force that threatens to overtake their very being. However, Yeo Harayun, the protagonist of this tale, stands as an exception. He possesses the rare ability to control this madness, to keep it at bay, channeling it to become the strongest being in existence. But these are not moments for idle thoughts. Dr. Jean, caught in a dire situation, finds Yeo Harayun's strength almost invincible. Desperate for escape, Jin's eyes catch sight of some candles. In a swift move, he pushes away a table, causing the candles to fall and ignite the bed where Yeo Harayun was laying down. The fire spreads rapidly, creating the perfect diversion for Dr. Jean. Interestingly, the flames seem to have an unexpected effect on Yeo Harayun. His anger, previously unbridled, begins to wane, as if the fire is quenching the madness within him. Dr. Jean ponders if it's indeed the natural killer's inherent chaos that is being tamed by the fire. Seizing the opportunity, Dr. Jean waits for the precise moment to free himself from Yeo Harayun's grasp. With a sudden move, he manages to remove Yeo Harayun's hand from his throat. Yeo Harayun, in a swift reaction, tries to regain his hold, but Dr. Jean, driven by survival, strikes back. The battle of wits and strength continues, each trying to surpass the other in a dangerous dance of fire and fury. Jean finally escapes from Yeo Harayun's grip. He coughs a lot and fears he might die. Meanwhile, Yeo Harayun becomes even angrier. His eyes turn redder, just like the character in their novel. The novel says the more someone hurts others, the more they want to destroy. Yeo Harayun gets ready to fight using martial arts. Jean knows he must calm Yeo Harayun down to stop his anger. As Yeo Harayun rushes at Jean, Jean suddenly remembers a line from their novel, Gango's favor and grudge are like two sides of the same coin. Hearing this, Yeo Harayun's anger vanishes. He stops and just stares at Jean. Jean thinks his plan might have worked. Yeo Harayun then remembers something his mother said before she died. She told him the same thing as the novel, being kind or holding a grudge can both lead to trouble. She wanted him to live a better life than she did. Yeo Harayun always remembered his mother's words because she was the only family he had. Yeo Harayun's disbelief is evident as he questions Jin's knowledge of such clandestine matters. Jin, indirect yet firm, offers to enlighten Yeo Harayun about the demon forces. He cunningly reveals the harsh truth: to join the demon forces, one must accept the blood parasite, a fate that spares no one, regardless of their strength or status. In this precarious exchange, Jin not only averts immediate danger but also challenges Yeo Harayun to reconsider his obediences and the path laid before him, hinting at a possible future beyond the manipulative clutches of the demon forces. Yeo Harayun looks worried when he thinks about the blood parasite. This parasite lives inside a person and harms their body. To control it, the host needs to take a special medicine ball every 10 days from the demon forces. If they don't take the medicine in time, the parasite will lay eggs inside them, which is very dangerous. Dr. Jean knows about this parasite and offers Yeo Harayun a way to get rid of it. Yeo Harayun is shocked and asks Jean who he is and how he knows so much. Jean doesn't really answer. He just says it's not important who he is or how he knows, but he can help Yeo Harayun. They look into each other's eyes. Then Yeo Harayun wonders if Jean is also after the church and asks which clan he belongs to. Jean realizes Yeo Harayun thinks he is part of one of the 8 great demonic clans. Those clan members often go on secret missions. Jean decides not to correct Yeo Harayun right now. Jean thinks about the fact that Yeo Harayun was alone on a wagon as a child, with no adult. This surprises Yeo Harayun, especially when he sees Jean locking the door. Yeo Harayun doesn't understand and asks what Jean is doing. Jean answers that he hopes this will help Yeo Harayun decide what to do next. As fiery tendrils licked the night sky, members of the Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery spotted the growing inferno. The smoke, the flames are rising, they cried out in alarm. There's a patient inside. Quickly, to the door. Inside, Dr. Jean and the young Yeo Harayun stood encircled by the blaze, the heat drawing sweat upon their brows. With a menacing sneer, Dr. Jean posed his ultimatum: will you take my hand, or die? Yeo Harayun, unfazed, retorted coolly, I could also just kill you and leave. A sly smile crept upon Dr. Jin's face, the light of the fire dancing in his eyes. Really? I already bear the bruises of an attack. Should I shout out that you're a spy, who do you think they'll believe? Yeo Haryun's gaze sharpened as he weighed his next move, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Outside, urgency crescendoed with voices shouting, "The homeowners are coming. Open the door quickly." In the midst of the chaos, Yeo Haryun's voice cut through the tension, "I remember now. You're the one who carried me and treated me when I fell unconscious. I thought it was just a dream, as I was in and out of consciousness. But it was real, wasn't it? And it seems you had your own reasons for helping me." Dr. Jean paused, considering his response. "Well, it's a bit of this and that. So, what's your decision going to be?" But internally, Jean was wrestling with his own thoughts. When he had saved Yeo Haryun, he hadn't known the boy was the Demon King. He had acted purely as a doctor, driven by the instinct to save a patient in need. Then, with a sense of urgency, Jean pressed him, "We don't have much time. The room will soon be filled with smoke, make up your mind." The two locked eyes, a silent battle of wills playing out amidst the encroaching flames. Yeo Haryun's internal struggle was evident as he bit his lip, wrestling with the gravity of the situation. Finally, he conceded, "All right, we'll join forces." Dr. Jean, watching this unfold, mused to himself, "Oh, so this is what Yeo Haryun looks like before he's killed a single person." At that moment, members of the Cloud Dragon service burst open the door, their faces etched with concern. "There's a young patient inside," they announced as they rushed in. In an instant, Dr. Jean transformed his demeanor, his tears flowing dramatically as he leaped towards the Cloud Dragon members, crying out for help. Embracing one of them tightly, he exclaimed, "Mom, my. Oh no. You must have been terrified." It was wise of him to lock the door, but he must not have known how to unlock it. Yeo Haryun, observing Jin's theatrics, was dumbstruck by the sudden shift. The Cloud Dragon Secure members, meanwhile, sprang into action, focusing on extinguishing the flames. Their thoughts were consumed with the child's welfare, imagining the terror he must have endured. As they prioritized evacuating the patient, Dr. Jean cast a backward glance at Yeo Haryun, his eyes twinkling with a mischievous smile that only Ryun could see. The scene dramatically shifts to the aftermath of the battle at the Cloud Dragon Delivery Service base, now a landscape of destruction and chaos. Amidst the rubble, members scurry about, prioritizing the evacuation of the gravely injured. The extent of the injuries is harrowing, severed limbs and critical wounds, a testament to the battle's brutality. Meanwhile, Dr. Jean, our protagonist, is immersed in the task of treating a severely wounded man. Onlookers gather, their eyes wide in awe and disbelief as they witness his extraordinary medical technique. What an amazing treatment! They murmur among themselves, questioning the possibility of survival after such invasive procedures. Can a person really survive after having his intestines sanitized like that? They wonder, watching Jin's methodical, yet unconventional, approach. They recall how these very methods saved their leader, Woon. As Jean works, thoughts swirl in his mind. The intestines might be salvageable, but the risk of infection is high without proper equipment, he muses. Despite the lack of medical technology at his disposal, Jean resolves to do whatever he can to save the man's life. 5. Other doctors, observing Jean preparing a cloth with alcohol and medicine, express their shock and confusion. "You're not putting the intestines back in, are you?" they question. But Jean knows his method, while unorthodox, is the best chance they have. He cleans the internal wounds meticulously, yet he's acutely aware of his limitations. "I've changed the cloth many times, but it's not enough. If only I could use a bit of this world's chi," he thinks, longing for the power that remains just out of his reach. Accepting his limitations, Jean takes a needle in hand, preparing to sew up the wounds. The crowd around him watches in stunned silence, witnessing the skill and determination of a man doing the impossible in the face of adversity. Dr. Jean, focused and resolute, begins his delicate work, each stitch a race against time to save a life. Into the tense atmosphere of the treatment room, where Dr. Jean labored over the wounded, entered the godly Dr. Bakran and General Yu-ho. Their arrival was met with urgent news from a member: 35 wounded, 12 critically injured, and 6 deemed beyond help. Bakran's sharp eyes immediately found Dr. Jean, engrossed in the delicate task of treating a patient with a pierced lung. Jean needed something akin to a scalpel, and his hand settled on a large knife, not ideal, but the best available option. The doctors around him gasped, "He's picked up the dagger again. There's no way he's going to use that," but Jean, undeterred, shouted for their assistance, demanding quick action to soak up the blood. He thought fiercely about employing pressure blotting, a technique to stop the bleeding that could significantly boost the patient's survival chances during the operation. Suddenly, Bakran's hands moved in a blur, employing a martial art technique that left Jean in awe. "Will this do?" the godly doctor inquired. Jean, startled by Bakran's presence, affirmed and asked everyone to hold the patient steady as he gently removed the sword. However, as he did so, blood gushed forth, causing panic among the assisting doctors. At this critical juncture, Bakran understood the dire need to control the bleeding. He called upon Yu-ho, who responded with determination and executed a martial arts technique, void control. It was a sight to behold, the blood being drawn and controlled through the air, akin to psychokinesis. Jean, astonished, realized that now was not the time for awe but for action. Focusing intently, he carefully made the necessary cuts with the dagger, his experience in emergency treatment coming to the fore. Under the immense pressure, he sutured the wound with precision. Bakran, witnessing Jin's expertise, could not help but be impressed. Jean, drenched in sweat from the intense ordeal, felt a wave of relief wash over him. The godly doctor, watching this scene, offered Jean a small, acknowledging smile, a gesture of respect and appreciation for his extraordinary medical skills. The scene transitions to a somber setting where caregivers, dressed in traditional attire, diligently tend to the injured. Into this tableau of healing and concern, Cloud Dragon Service leader Woon Yu-haeon and the noble Gong Sun-yang approach one of their members with a pressing question. "How many of the severely wounded have we managed to save?" Woon Yu-haeon inquires with a weighted tone. The member's response is laden with a mix of hope and sorrow. "We had 7 severely wounded. 2 were beyond help, and of the 5 who received treatment, sadly, 2 have just passed away." The news casts a shadow of worry over the faces of both Woon Yu-haeon and Gong Sun-yang. In a moment of gratitude, Woon Yu-haeon turns to the godly Dr. Bakran, acknowledging his invaluable efforts. "We were able to save precious lives, thanks to you," he says with heartfelt appreciation. The godly doctor, humble in his response, dismisses the need for thanks. He shifts the spotlight onto Dr. Jean, expressing his admiration for Jin's exceptional medical skills. "I had to leave partway, but it was this child, Dr. Jean, whose skills truly saved lives tonight," he shares. Woon Yu-haeon, reflecting on the night's events, admits his disbelief at the remarkable outcomes. "It felt like a dream," he murmurs. Gong Sun-yang's gaze then falls upon Dr. Jean, who, overcome with exhaustion from his Herculean efforts, has fallen asleep. The godly doctor looks at Jean with understanding and compassion. "It's no wonder he's tired. He's been through a great deal tonight." He instructs Yu-ho to find a comfortable place for Jean to rest. Yu-ho, with a gentle care, lifts Jean in his arms and carries him away. As the night draws to a close, the tale of Jean Cheon-he's extraordinary contributions begins to weave its way through the Cloud Dragon secure delivery service. His name becomes a topic of conversation and debate, marking the beginning of his legend within the group. Days later, the setting shifts to a quiet corner of the Cloud Dragon Secure Delivery Service base, where 3 members engage in a hushed conversation about Yeo Harayun. "He's stubborn as hell," one member comments. "He barely talks to anyone and keeps trying to hurt himself. Even the warriors are tired of his antics. Can you believe it, even after cutting off all his muscle veins?" Another member chimes in, "We've brought in an expert from the Hao clan. He'll make Yeo talk." The conversation takes a turn towards speculation. There are rumors that he was after the young master of the noble clan. The secure delivery service wasn't carrying anything of value, so it's a plausible theory. The scene then cuts to Dr. Jean, who is peeking through a door, reflecting on the advantages of having a child's body. He eavesdrops on the conversation, overhearing that Gong's son Heian from the main family has visited. "She must despise seeing her cousin alive," one member says. "She's forced to come here just to avoid suspicion." But Jean knows better. He understands that Gong's son Heian loves her cousin more than anyone else in the world. Rumors can indeed be frightening, he thinks. The members' conversation continues, focusing on that child's condition. They mention Dr. Jean, noting handprints on his neck but stating he seems fine now. Apparently, the other kid caused them during a nightmare, they say. "It's awful to do that to such a good kid like Jean. He's done so much for us." One member wonders aloud if Jean might be covering up for the child. Another responds, "It's hard to say. Jean is a deep thinker and has a soft heart." They add that even their leader found ointment for Jin's neck. Though the white dragon godly doctor put it on him first. Jean, still listening, muses on their grooming, noting, they think Gong's son Heian plotted the attack to kill her cousin. Lost in his thoughts, Jean suddenly freezes as the door swings open. Standing before him is Yeo Harayun, his expression intense. "I was wondering where you had gone," Yeo Harayun says, his voice carrying a mix of relief and curiosity. "I've finally found you." The scene transitions to the outdoors, where Jean and Ryun stand just outside the Cloud Dragon base. In the cool evening air, Yeo Harayun turns to Jean with a question, "What is it you want from me?" Dr. Jean, sitting casually on a stone, replies with a hint of nonchalance, "Well, the problem is that there's nothing I want from you." Ryun's face contorts into a puzzled expression as he echoes, "What?" Jean continues, "Come on. I treated you when you were on the brink of death, revealed the chi-dispersing poison to predict the invasion, and nursed you back to health amidst all that chaos, but, ow ow ow. Look what I have gotten in return." Ryun, annoyed, retorts, "You said you wanted to make a deal." Jean, his face clouding over, responds, "I changed my mind. I can't trust you." After a brief silence, Ryun ventures, "Would it not be enough for me to apologize?" Jean ponders for a moment before coming to a decision. All right. Let's do this then. Call me Hyung from now on." Ryun reacts with intensity, almost shouting, "Are you saying you want us to be sworn brothers?" He adds with a tinge of confusion, "Since you are my savior, I'd like to be the one to make the request, but, it's weird for you to be the older brother." Jean, unfazed, asks, "What's weird about it? I can't be the younger brother when I'm older than you." Ryun, adopting a fighting stance, challenges Jean to a fight. Jean, in a mix of fear and exasperation, exclaims, "What a real bully. You want to fight a civilian who knows no martial arts. Your savior, the one who treated your wound." Ryun stands silently, unwavering. Jean then suggests, "Try calling me Hyung." Ryun flatly refuses, leading Jean to scream, "So you really want me to get beat by you and be your younger brother? Alright, then, hit me." Ryun, internally acknowledging the absurdity yet finding it oddly convincing, reluctantly concedes. With eyes averted and head slightly tilted, Jean urges, "Alright then, say it." After a moment of hesitation, Ryun relents, muttering, Hyung. Jean, not satisfied, demands louder. Annoyed but compliant, Ryun shouts, Jean Cheon Hee Hyung Nim. Jean, victorious in this battle of wills, gives a devilish smile. Very good, little brother. You should have said that a long time ago. Unbeknownst to them, Gong Song Yang observes the entire exchange from a distance, utterly baffled by the interaction between the two. Out of the blue, Gong Sun Yang appeared, waving her hand cheerfully. What are you two doing here? She asked with curiosity. Jean and Ryun turned to her, and Jean greeted her with a friendly, "Oh, hello. How've you been, savior kiddo?" Gong Sun Yang asked Jean, who felt a bit awkward at the nickname. She then came closer to them and said, I'm picking flowers to give to my cousin. You're a doctor, aren't you? Do you know much about medicinal herbs? Jean replied that he didn't know much about them, so he couldn't help much. But Gong Sun Yang still asked if he wouldn't mind helping her anyway. While Jean looked around for flowers, Ryun made a face, clearly finding the task annoying. Gong Sun Yang, however, seemed delighted, her smile bright as she watched them both. And so, Jean became sworn brothers with the little demon king Yeo Ryun and got to talk with Gong Sun Haeon and Gong Sun Yang. Gong Sun Yang was the sort of person who brought energy and joy to everyone around her. The scene changes, and we see Gong Sun Yang handing something to Jean. It's a magnificent sword called the Black Pine Cloud. This sword is famous for being unbreakable and is perfect for secret missions because its dark blade doesn't shine in the light. Jean looks at the sword and tells Yang that he can't accept such a gift. Yang looks surprised and says, I owe you for saving my life. I haven't paid you back yet. Jean responds, your noble family has already paid me back. But Yang insists, that was just my family paying you back, not me. The Black Pine Cloud sword doesn't fit my way of fighting anymore. I'd have to give it back to my family anyway. It would be better if you used it. It would make me happy to give it to you. After hearing this, Jean agrees to take the sword. He then asks Yang, could you show me just once how to use the sword? The scene moves to a duel field, with Gong Sun Yang standing at the center. For Dr. Jean, this is a rare chance to see the noble clan's sword style, known as the Blue Pine Spiraling Sword. Yang moves gracefully, her hands flashing like light. The noble clan's swordsmanship is all about smooth, continuous movements, a style developed by their founder, Gong Sun Yun, who became the strongest in the world. Their sword style is represented by symbols of waves or wind, showing how they value consistency and flow. Yang's swordsmanship is truly impressive. Even though she is young, she is clearly a genius and an expert. Jean watches her, amazed by her skill and grace. He thinks about how she's in a state of selflessness, using the noble clan's ultimate technique, the preemptive counterstrike. It's like a perfect counter in modern terms. Yang moves like a pine tree swaying in the wind, ending her demonstration with a swift, black line through the air. Jean is captivated by her performance. This must be enlightenment, he thinks, unable to look away. Gong Sun Haeon, her cousin, along with two servants, applauds and congratulates Yang on becoming a grandmaster. They are all very happy, saying this is a big moment that the clan should know about right away. Yang humbly credits Jean for his advice, which helped her gain insight. Jean modestly replies that it was nothing, expressing his gratitude for learning the noble swordsmanship and receiving the Black Pine Cloud sword. Just then, Yang suddenly faints. Haeon calls out in alarm, Hey, Yang! Help her up. Quickly. Then decides to support her herself. Everyone is worried and confused. Jean understands that Yang used all her energy in a state of selflessness to reach enlightenment. Even with her extraordinary stamina, she has her limits. As Haeon helps Yang, Jean decides to go find Yeo Ryun while the noble clan is focused on Yang's recovery. The scene shifts to a bustling marketplace near the Cloud Dragon secure delivery service base. Jean turns to Harayun and asks, "You don't have money, right?" He assures Harayun that he will pay for everything, mentioning that he has received a lot of allowance money from the elders, who seem keen on giving gifts these days. As they stroll through the market, Jean buys some snacks. Handing them to Harayun, he says cheerfully, "Your big brother is treating you, so just enjoy, kiddo." Harayun makes a face, a bit unsure about calling Jean big brother. Jean reminds him, "What? We agreed I'm the older brother. This is what older brothers do." But Jean can tell Harayun isn't fully comfortable with the idea yet. Suddenly, Jin's attention is caught by something. "Ah, it's Tanghulu. I'm going to buy some, just wait here," he tells Harayun. As Jean walks away to buy the sweet treat, Harayun watches him from behind. But unexpectedly, a rough man comes out of nowhere and punches Harayun in the head for no apparent reason. Suddenly, Jean hears a commotion coming from a nearby crowd. He wonders, what's happening? Has Harayun gotten himself into trouble? Someone in the crowd remarks, "Picking a fight with a kid, those guys are really something else." Jean senses danger at these words. In the midst of the crowd, a big, burly man attempts to punch Harayun, but Harayun effortlessly dodges it. He observes the man's moves carefully. When the man throws another heavy punch, Harayun swiftly finds an opening and knocks him down with a well-aimed punch. Seeing their companion fall, another man from the group yells, "How dare you," and rushes to attack Harayun. But like before, Harayun dodges smoothly and strikes the man's foot, sending him to the ground too. The last of the three men, witnessing the defeat of his friends, is paralyzed with fear. He sees Harayun charging towards him with a look of bloodlust, and then Harayun lands a devastating blow. This powerful strike ends up killing all three attackers. The surrounding crowd is stunned, whispering to each other, "Who is that kid? He took down the three dogs so easily. Is he from some famous clan? They always cause trouble here. It's refreshing to see them taken down." Dr. Jean, watching from a distance, feels a sense of pride. "That's my little brother," he thinks, reassured that they were bad guys and it probably won't cause any trouble. Jean calls out to Harayun, "Hey, little bro. Here," but he immediately notices something alarming. Harayun's eyes are glowing red, a clear sign that his bloodlust has been triggered by the fight. Jean quickly realizes that something bad is about to happen.